Hey there guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. This is Haight's Wanderings coming at you guys in the middle of the winter. But if you look outside, it doesn't feel like winter. Honestly, I was on a boat last night. Literally, open water last night. I'm gonna be honest, there were flying insects. I went out spearing for the first time ever. It was very interesting. Spearing whitefish, but I was on a boat in the middle of December. Very weird. All right, guys. So this video, two things. First thing, I am highly caffeinated. Actually, wait, that's not three things. Number one, I'm highly caffeinated this morning. It's Christmas tomorrow. I'm super excited. My 4-year-old is bursting with energy, and I have picked up some of her energy. So that's number one. Number two, we have a winner. We did a giveaway, and that giveaway concluded minutes ago when I found the winner. So how I did it wasn't a super scientific process, but there were no shenanigans. Trust me on that. I chose the comment. I asked my wife, I said, Melanie, pick a number 1 through 100. And she said 27. That was her number. So I started in my comment section and I read through all the comments. And I told you guys that if you had shared with another person that you would get your name in a second time. So I went through and I counted off people that didn't leave a shared name. That was just 1. And if people did, that was 2. And I went through all the way through. And I got to my 27th one. And it is an Eric Wakeman 665. Oh, that was some weird focusing right there. Regardless, Eric Wakeman, you are the winner. So as long as Eric Wakeman accepts this gift, he will be the winner. If for some reason he declines, which I don't think that's going to happen, but let's just imagine it happens, then I will draw again. But Eric Wakeman, please reach out to me through my website, haightswanderings.com. Reach out to me through there, and we will set up a wonderful trip. We're going to film it. You guys are all going to see it next year. It's going to be a banger. Maybe we'll go for smallmouth. Maybe we'll go for muskie, pike, walleye, trout, whatever. Whatever happens, we're going to have fun. All right. That was the second thing. The third thing today is the question and answer Q&A, and I'm going to be pulling those up on my phone. I'll read the question, and then I'm going to be doing answers. And we are going to have a good time with this. So I'm going to read them, and let's get going. So this comes from Tim Coffero. I believe I pronounced your name right. Hey, Tim. Hope you had a good time this summer. Had a good time with you. He asks, what is the best spinnerbait blade color and skirt for smallmouth? Well, the truth is I don't fish spinnerbaits very often, almost ever, so I don't really know if there's a blade color or skirt color. I really like chartreuse and white, but I don't know. I would go chartreuse and white. That's what I roll with. I don't know if that's best, but hopefully that helps. Steelhead Kenny asks if I ever chase smallmouth in Michigan, and the answer is absolutely. I live in Michigan, and I fish almost exclusively for smallmouth. Let's see. I'm trying to find some questions here. All right, so this is Dane Ward, that is, potentially. He asks if I've ever fished for coaster brook trout along Lake Superior. The answer is no. for those of you that don't know, coaster brook trout they're brook trout, but they live in the Great Lakes, and they are very rare, and they can get really large, like 20 plus inch fish, which is a giant brook trout, really. And but they're really rare. They're called coasters because they live along the coast of the Great Lakes. But no, I've never fished for them. Richard Meyer asks, when I'm river muskie fishing, do I use fluorocarbon or wire leaders? And this is a super easy answer, Richard. I only use metal steel leaders. That's all I use anymore. I used to fish with fluorocarbon, and I had a muskie. I was fly fishing actually, and or I think I was fly fishing. No, I was not fly fishing. Actually, I take it back. I was fishing a mini Medusa, and I watched like a 30-inch muskie blast up and immediately sliced through I think it was a 100-pound fluorocarbon. And I watched the entire thing happen, and it happened in a moment. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to use metal from now on. I'm not even going to screw around with fluorocarbon. And that was a few years back. And I have, looking at my catch and bite numbers when it comes to muskie, I have not seen a significant change. So just fish with steel. Mr. 9190297, that's a very interesting username. But he says, do I like fishing for crappie, and what's my personal best crappie? I don't know. Maybe I've caught like a 15-incher, maybe? That sounds about right. I don't fish for crappie very often. They're not really my thing. There are some lakes that I go to where there are decent number of crappie, but no, really I'm more about smallmouth and a little bit larger fish, Steve Kaminsky asks if I've ever tried the Fat Bastard or Dr. Evil from Lake X Lures. I believe I have. I believe this is potentially a Fat Bastard. I don't know. I got giant hands, and this is a big bait. I've not yet used this. I'd like to, though. But this thing is huge. Kind of scares me, to be honest. One of these days, I'll get out there and I'll use it. I have one. I just, haven't found the right moment to use it. Jim Doak asks if I'm still committed to the Ned rig. Jim has been out with me a couple times, and I'm telling him, every time he comes out with me, I tell him, the Ned rig is awesome, we gotta use it. And every single time he comes out, the Ned rig is not awesome, and it doesn't catch fish. But yes, to answer your question, Jim, I am still committed to the Ned rig. I have caught too many fish on it to give up on it. Jordan Mount asks, what do I prefer to fish for? Muskie, trout, walleye, salmon, bass, or pike? I think I've answered this before, but really just fishing for warm water species. If I target smallmouth, I have a chance of catching everything. And so that's probably my preferred tactic, is fishing somewhere where I have a chance at walleye, pike, smallmouth, muskie, largemouth, whatever. I think that's a lot of fun. Chris Kupzak, I believe I pronounced your name wrong. Sorry about that, Chris. He asks about a kayak fishing net. I would really suggest I think they're like the extra large version of the EGO. I think they're called like an EGO, I don't know, EGO slider or something like that. The net size is like 22 inches by 24 inches, which seems giant, and it is, but it's really nice in a kayak because you can catch pretty much all species inside the net. but you can use it as like a live well right off the side of your kayak. What I do is I shove it under my legs, and I have the net in the water, and so again, I can get the fish in there. I can like usually paddle myself over to a safe spot on the side of the river, and then I can deal with the fish. A lot of people have like small dinky little nylon nets, and they'll bring the fish up into the kayak. It's flopping around, hurting itself, potentially getting hooks in you or hooks elsewhere in the fish. Just use one of the EGO, the big nets. And I think I have one. I have one somewhere. Let me just find it really quick. So this is the net. I mean, it appears to be large, but it's really not that bad. I mean, I love this thing. You can catch all sorts of fish in it, and it's an EGO. I don't know what the brand is, or it's EGO, but I don't know the specific name. All right. Chris also asks about 3 things that I'm looking for when I'm scouting new water. 1, does it connect to a larger body of water that holds the species I'm looking for? For instance, is there unfettered, unrestricted access between the water and a larger body of water that holds, pike, muskie, smallmouth, etc.? So if a smaller body of water connects, then you're usually going to find the same species in there. So that's number 1. Number 2, I look to see if there is much of a human footprint. If there's houses, bridges, things like that. I really don't like fishing where there is easy access, so I try to avoid anything like that. So connected to a large body of water, not a big, huge human footprint. And number 2, scouting new water. What else do I do? I go in with 0 expectations. And I just kind of do a scouting day where I look and just have fun and just kind of look for fishy spots. I don't really go in fishing for fish. I just kind of look to see if there are fish signs. And then that kind of can narrow it down whether or not it's going to be a productive spot or not. So Trout Bum John asks if I have any locations that I fish myself, but that are too special to take clients to. Trout Bum John, I think the answer is yeah. Yeah, I do have places that are very special that I go to myself, and I don't, take other people there. Usually they're remote, kind of inaccessible, and I feel like there's just would be too much pressure with more people, and so it's just little spots where I go by myself. So absolutely. And definitely, he asked about special memories. I have lots of special memories of different little places. I have this little creek that I fish in, and I once I caught a tiger muskie in that creek, and I put the muskie back in the water, and minutes later, I was fishing. I had my rod tip down, and I was jerking a Zara spook, and the muskie was chased by another muskie. It jumped out of the water, and it literally jumped over my rod tip as I was jerking the Zara spook, and it was a pretty crazy moment. I didn't know what happened until I looked back and I watched the footage, and I realized that I had a muskie chase a second muskie, jump straight over my rod tip. That was crazy. All right, this one is Go With the Gilmores. He says, what was one adventure where everything went wrong? What is one bucket list trip you've always wanted to go to? And are there any fisheries that I've always wanted to fish but haven't had the opportunity? Bucket list trip, let's talk about that one first. I want to go and fish the Nipigon River. The Nipigon River, it flows into Thunder Bay, so it's basically directly north in Ontario, and it's a world-class brook trout fishery. So the Nipigon River is high on my list of future shenanigans. How about an adventure where everything went wrong? I actually have a video of it from a couple of years ago. It's a 3-day trip with my dad, and we caught like 250 fish or something like that. Everything went wrong. I'll start with my dad. We're on a 3-day trip, right? And I told my dad we have to drag the raft, we have to do all of these things, right? He shows up in Crocs. Now, no hate on Crocs. They're a wonderfully comfortable boat shoe if all you're going to be doing is just standing. But if you're going to be dragging a raft through rocky, sharp, like river gorges for 3 days, you need something better than Crocs. So I told my dad, I was like, you're not going to be able to pull for 3 days. And so I legitimately dragged the raft, my dad, for 3 days. And if you haven't seen that video, go with the Gilmores. I encourage you to watch it. It is a lot of fun. It's a crazy awesome adventure, but oh my gosh, it was full of shenanigans. All right. Folens B says, top species on the bucket list. I'd like to catch tiger fish from the Zambezi River. I'd like to catch it on gear. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Top water might be amazing. I have fished on the Zambezi. I just struck out hard when I was fishing there. Joel van de Koppel, sounds like a Dutch last name. What percentage of trips to new bodies of water do you contact muskies? Joel, that's a great question. I don't know the percentage. I would say, though, fairly high. I think if I'm fishing a new body of water, I generally have a fairly good idea of the fish that are in there. And so I think I have a pretty good percentage of finding muskie there. Now, if I'm just, fishing a random body of water that I don't know if there's fish in it, then finding muskie is very low. But if I'm targeting a body of water that I specifically think there are muskie in it, then, and it's a new trip completely, maybe a 50-50 chance. Which I think is a fairly high number. I think a good example of this would be the giveaway trip that I did in 2023. Went to a completely new body of water, came away with 2 muskie, 2 40-plus inch muskie in the same day, and had no idea what to expect. Completely new experience. T. Meyer asks, he says something about being an English teacher, and then he says, do you ever guide on weekends during the school year? Yes. Yes, I do, and it's very difficult. In May and also in September, and sometimes rarely into October, I'll guide during the weekends. It just makes for a very long week. 5 days teaching and then straight into a fishing trip and then maybe 1 day of rest. Sometimes when I'm feeling real crazy pants, I'll do 5 days teaching, 2 days fishing, back then to teaching. And those are the ones where I get burned out really, really quickly. Fishing trips and teaching are interesting because I have to change my personality and how I'm doing them. So if I'm on the water with clients, there's a different me than when I'm in the classroom. And if I'm guiding trips and also teaching and in the same time frame, my personality blends a little bit, and it's weird. So I like to kind of keep a good barrier between the two. And so June, July, August is when I normally do most of my trips. User BW2VW with a bunch of other random letters and numbers. Looks like honestly, your username looks like a bot created it. No offense on that, but he asks about decent areas to try for coasters. First off, I have no idea. But second off, I don't actually give specific information on fishing locations. I feel that it's a little bit rude to give out fishing locations on the internet. And I'm not trying to preach to you right now. Other people have different philosophies on that, but it's just not my style. I try not to do that. But what I would suggest is that if you're looking for fishing places, just go fishing. Just go and try it. That can't hurt. You might strike out, or you might find a new favorite spot. That's kind of how I found all of my places. Paul Fishman says, do I ever fish south of the bridge? No, not really. I grew up in Southwest Michigan, and a long time ago, I used to fish the Paw Paw River a little bit. But other than that, I fished the St. Joe a bit. I don't really fish beneath the bridge much. I know there's a lot of great water down there. It's a long drive for me, and I don't really have the time to do it. Carl C. asks, what area is my favorite to fish? Flowing water. Rivers, creeks, streams, those are by far my favorite areas to fish. I don't really like fishing lakes because they're deep. You can't see the bottom. I love being able to see the bottom and watch fish. It's probably my favorite thing to do. This is DT Fishing Michigan. He says, his question is, what is the most embarrassing fishing story? The most embarrassing fishing story. I don't even know. Most embarrassing fishing story. I'm going to have to take a pause, and I'm going to have to think. Embarrassing fishing story. Okay. All right. I got it. I had to think for a moment, and I thought of it, and I was just like, yep, absolutely stupidity. So here goes. I was in my kayak, had a bunch of rods in the back of it. It was my sit-inside kayak. I had this milk crate strapped to the back. It was a super jury-rigged little craft. If you've ever looked at it was an old kayak from, I don't even know who makes them. It was called a River Otter, I think it was called. Shoot, I can't remember the brand of the kayak, but whatever. It is a little sit inside, and it was late in the evening. It was kind of in the fall, so the water was cold. I was trying to catch some largemouth, and I was going under a bridge, a very low bridge, and I had my rods up behind me, and I'm paddling under the bridge, and I hear this horrible scraping sound, and I look back behind me, and my rods are scraping the tips off and breaking the tips off against the bridge, and I try to lunge backwards to get my rods down, and as I do that, I somehow flip my kayak beneath this bridge. I'm in 6 feet of water or something, and I don't swim very well. I'm sputtering and, water, just nonsense. I get my kayak and I drag it to the bank, and the water's clear enough, and I can look down, and all my rods are on the bottom of the. It was like a channel. It wasn't really like a river. I can see all of them down there, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? And I was like, the water was cold. I was pissed off. I was very frustrated. And so I dived down, got my stuff, came back, dived back down, completely soaking wet, and so frustrated. And I was like, why wouldn't I forget that I had my rods sticking up behind my kayak? So that's one of my more embarrassing fishing moments. I've had other ones that were pretty stupid too. Mr. Morgan CA asks if I could fish for one species the rest of my life, what would I fish for? Smallmouth. But see, the reason I say smallmouth is because everything else is going to bite it as well. So I'm targeting smallmouth knowing that I'm going to get other fish. If I said muskie, you don't usually get other fish to bite muskie lures, but everything will bite a smallmouth bait. So it's kind of a cheeky response from me, but that's what I'm going to say. Blake Bedendorf says, what are some go-to smallmouth baits for the river you would recommend for him? Blake, go-to smallmouth baits for the river. Well, let's break it down into 3. You're going to want a topwater, you're going to want a subsurface bait, and you're going to want a finesse soft plastic. 3 baits for smallmouth. Let's start with topwater. Plopper plopper. Let's do it. Get a size 75 whopper plopper. You could also go with a size 90 whopper plopper. Don't get the size 60. It's too small. Size 75 or a size 90 whopper plopper. Doesn't matter the color. Nobody cares. Fish will bite it. Number 2. Subsurface, I think, as I said. I would get a size 3 and a size 4 Mepps Aguila or Aguila. I'm not actually sure on the pronunciation. Spinner. Inline spinner. That's topwater. That's subsurface. And then for your finesse bait, I would probably get some little wacky worm hooks. I think Owner makes decent wacky worm hooks. And then I would get 4-inch Senkos. 4-inch Senko, wacky worm, that'll be your finesse. So those 3 baits could probably catch you fish from the beginning of the year to the end of the season. All 3 of them, sporadically used throughout, but they're great river baits. Those will catch fish. Robert Zilstra says, he asks if I've ever fished the driftless region. That's, I believe, in Minnesota/Wisconsin. No, I have not. One of these days I'll get down there and I'll fish it. Michael McShirley asks my personal muskie count. I don't know. I would have to go through many years worth of logs and count up. For you that don't know, I am meticulous in keeping track of things, and I have a 250 page long Word document that has every single fish that I have personally caught or caught with somebody else, or somebody with me has caught for the last 12 years maybe. Maybe it's only 11 years old, the log. I'm kind of forgetting how long I've been in the UP, but every single fish that I've caught in the last decade is on there. So I would be able to have a very precise number for muskie caught. But I don't know currently what that is. It's not in the thousands, and it's definitely in the hundreds. If I had to guess, I would say I am north of 200. I don't know, 200 to 300 muskie, maybe? I don't know. That could be wrong. If I have time over Christmas break, maybe I'll go and figure that out for you, Michael. Rachel Calkin says, What time of year is my favorite to target smallies? Summertime, when the water's warm and I can wet wade. Just, pair of shorts, just jump in the river. I love it. I don't really like fishing when it's cold. There's better times of the year to fish probably, but the summer is just wonderful. Todd Shook asks, what water temperature do I start fishing for smallies? I don't know. That doesn't help you, Todd, but what water temp do I start fishing for smallmouth? I don't know. Topwater, I don't know. I'm trying to think. 50s? Does that sound right? I kind of just go on the feel. Like I walk outside, I'm like, does it feel like I should go try a topwater? And I might do that. And a lot of times I'm surprised with how early in the year you can actually find fish on topwater. It happens, and I don't really even expect it to happen. I sometimes just go screw around. I go to a place where I know smallmouth should be, and usually if they're there and they're willing to hit topwater, they'll do it right away. You might get them on your first cast. And if they're not willing to hit topwater, then they're not going to hit it for 3 hours of casting. So really you can go and you can figure it out really quickly. You just got to get on the water. Deadeye 3666 says, are there any rivers that you ended up regretting going down in a canoe or raft? He then says that he has a few that he's done that he regrets. Yes, I do have a couple of regrets. Canoe, raft. I'm actually going to talk about kayak. I actually made a video of it from like 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know the name of the video, so you'd have to search, but it's kayaking a small stream in like September. And from the very beginning of the video, I realized that it was a stupid decision. I was dragging my kayak. I probably dragged my kayak for miles and miles that day. The water flow was unbelievably low, like maybe 10 cubic feet per second, like so low. There was no water flowing, and I was pretty much an idiot for doing it. But sometimes sometimes you gotta figure it out. It might be good, it might be bad. And there is a rule of scouting. If you're going to scout new water, you have to understand that the rule of scouting states everything will be at least twice as long as you plan it to be. If you look at a river and it's 5 miles long and you're like, hey, you know what? That's like 8 hours on the water. Double that. It's going to be 16 hours on the water. If you look at something and you're like, oh, I could do that in 2 hours, probably, it's going to be 4 hours on the water. And now that's with scouting, right? So double whatever you think, and you're probably going to be safe, and you're going to get back to your car about then. And that rule of scouting is legitimate. So if you've ever gone and just bushwhacked into the wild, I'm telling you, the scouting rule of twos, it'll hit you. Okay. Alex Magner says, he's a big river smallie guy, he says. He's not familiar with river muskie. He asks, do you find in rivers that have both, do they seem to be in the same kind of areas and the same structure, substrate, etc.? Yeah, Alex, I think I do find them in the same areas. Sometimes. The rivers I fish sometimes have areas that are somewhat dead, and then there's areas that are really fishy. And I think that the style of rivers that I fish like that, you have a long stretch of really shallow, rocky stuff, and then it, cuts a little bit deeper, and you'll find, smallies and muskie. I think that is particularly due to the fact that there's not a whole lot of great water, right? And so they both tend to be in the areas that are a little bit deeper and a little bit more fishier. In a larger river system that has areas, the entire river that have areas for, smallmouth and muskie, would they still be in the same areas? I don't know. I mean, I don't fish larger rivers, so I couldn't really tell you. But I think they're in the same areas. That's gonna be my guess. That's what I'm gonna say. Tom Bloom, maybe it's Blom, I'm not sure. Can you recommend lures for big pike in dark UP water? No. I don't catch big pike. Big pike are uber rare. I don't know about you, Tom, but I don't know anybody that catches big pike when they're actually targeting them, unless you're ice fishing in the Great Lakes. I almost said a body of water, but I'm not gonna say that. There are places in the Great Lakes that you can target big pike, but other than that, I really truly don't know. What would you fish for? I don't know, like a big bucktail maybe, that might work. A big spinnerbait maybe. I don't know. I haven't caught enough big pike to really have a good idea. And I assume when you mean big pike, you mean like a pike over 40 inches. I couldn't tell you, I'm sorry. Eric Jurgensen asks what my favorite musky lure is. I don't know. A Mepps spinner of some kind, probably. I really like Mepps lures. They're inexpensive, they're durable, and they occasionally catch fish. So I think that might be it. Paul Woj asks about my favorite lure for early season muskie. I don't know. This last year I caught muskie early on topwater, which blew my mind. And I actually caught him on this guy right here. This is a top raider. I'd never actually caught a fish on this before this spring, and I was feeling stupid. And this goes back to a previous comment. Somebody asked about water temperatures for topwater. I just went down to the river to screw around. I didn't even think it would work, but I wanted to fish, so I had a couple minutes. And I was tossing this, and blam! I got blasted 2 muskie, and I also caught smallmouth on this giant thing. So I don't usually fish early spring muskie, but topwater, I guess. I know that sounds ridiculous, but Rowan Reska asks about my favorite subsurface musky lure. Rowan actually caught the largest muskie that I've ever had a client catch, and he caught it on a Mepps. So you know what, Rowan, I'm going to actually tell you, the lure you were using is my favorite subsurface bait. He caught a trophy muskie, and it was radical. It really was. I think I have a picture I might throw up right here for you guys. KCW asks, how do you locate small river muskies? Go to any river in Wisconsin. Fish it. If it has smallmouth, it also has muskie. That is how you locate small river muskie. I guess a more serious answer, though, is if a body of water connects to a larger body of water, and the larger body of water has pike, muskie, walleye, smallmouth in it, therefore probably the smaller body of water also does. That's how you target small river fish, is you find the areas that are flowing into bigger, reservoirs and whatnot. Shane Jenkins asks if I've ever busted my knee on my raft. Yeah, I have. I was doing a solo trip once, and I was standing up, and we hit a gravel bar. I hit a gravel bar, and my raft just stopped on a dime. I was standing, tumbled forward, hit my knee, whew, straight into the water, which was pretty stupid, but I'm okay. Brock asks about an all-time favorite musky lure. Topwater, that is. Topwater lure. Topwater musky. I don't really have a favorite. Ooh, I take it back. Let's grab it. This guy. Oh. Now, I haven't caught a ton of muskie on this thing, but sometimes your favorite lure doesn't have to be the most productive lure. And you asked my favorite topwater. I love the look of this stupid snake. I think it's called a wake snake. Maybe a Savage Gear snake? You know, honestly, I don't actually know what its name is. "3D Snake" by Savage Gear. It's a lot of fun to fish. I have caught muskie on it. Tons of fun. Souptown Airsoft asks if I ever fish Wisconsin water. Yes, I do. Rarely. But I get into Wisconsin, when I can. Ramsey asks about water level on the rivers and if it changes my fishing tactics. And the answer is, of course, absolutely. The water levels are incredibly important to where fish are located, what types of baits you can use, and really how you can even target those fish. I mean, low water, fish are hard to find. High water, fish are hard to find. There's like a perfect water level that you can catch fish, and it really depends. Droughts suck, floods suck, but can you find fish in those times of the year? Yeah, but you're gonna have to modify what you do. I don't know if I prefer water a little bit lower or a little bit higher. I think my answer is going to be I prefer when the water's a little bit higher because it opens up more areas of the river that you could find fish in. In like lower water situations, fish are going to be tended to be in, the deeper pools and deeper runs. And so while they're more dense in those spots, you don't have as many opportunities throughout the day because there's, you go through dead areas where there's not a whole lot of fish. But if the water's higher, you're going to find more fish sporadically throughout the day, which I think I would prefer. Bob Rich asks about my largest smallmouth. I don't know. Maybe in 20.5 to 21 inch smallmouth. I don't usually keep track of length, so I've probably caught a 21 inch fish and just didn't measure it. But actually measured, 20.5 is the largest that I've personally caught. M. Brown asks, what type of fishing do I most enjoy? Fly fishing or spinning reel? I just like catching fish. I love being on the water. I like doing both. I like catching fish. I think I just said that. So whichever tactic works is the one I want to do. I'm not going to beat my head against the wall trying to fly fish if the conditions don't work for it. But if the conditions are good, I love to fly fish. Charles Lucas asks, since starting my guide business, do I find that fishing is a chore or do I enjoy it the same? It's a great question. I think at times I can have a negative attitude when it comes to fishing. sometimes I book too many days in a row and I'm just tired and burnt out. And at that time, those times, fishing can be a little bit of a chore, but it's not really the fishing that's a chore. It's actually like the getting the raft in the water, the getting the raft out of the water, the portaging around obstacles. The actual aspect of fishing, I don't think I've ever found that to be a chore. But getting to the fishing spots and getting back from the fishing spots, that starts to get old somewhat quickly. If I'm on like day 6 in a row or something, I might be a little bit, little moody, maybe. Maybe it's more than 6 days in a row. Maybe 10 days in a row. Then I get a little pissy. Michael Brady asks if I like topwater muskie as much as he does, and I would assume that yes, I do. VA Outdoor Sportsman, he asks, is there an inflatable or other float boat that you would recommend that works well with an outdoor motor? He's thinking of fishing some remote streams and rivers that don't have put-ins and takeouts. So the Hooligan raft that I run, you can put an outboard on it. I've never done that, partially because outboards are expensive. But like I think you can put a 2 or a 2.5 or a 3-horse motor on the back. There's a motor mount on there, and it can push you along decently. They're just expensive. One of these days I want to get an outboard, but currently I just roll with a trolling motor, and that does a decent job of pushing me around. So yes, there are absolutely inflatables that have motors that you can attach relatively easily. Rich Reska, hey there, Rich, asks the strangest or coolest thing I've seen while fishing UP rivers. Coolest or strangest thing I've seen fishing UP rivers. One time I was paddling along and I saw something odd floating in the water. So I went over. And as I got closer, I started to smell it before I could identify it. And it was a full wolf decomposing as it floated along the river. That was a bit of a shock. One time I was on the river and I saw an albino fawn alongside its twin, which was not albino, but it was a regular fawn. That was pretty cool. This year I was on the river and I saw a family of mink, and there were like 6 babies, and they were running in a troop along the riverbank, jumping over like obstacles and tree limbs as a whole family, a troop of them. And they stopped and they'd all look, at the same time, and then they'd like get back down. They're scurrying along, and that was super cool. Strangest. You asked for strangest or weirdest. Is that the right word to use? Strangest or coolest? I always find it amazingly cool to see a muskie that bites onto a different species of fish that's hooked, and it gets brought all the way into the boat. You very infrequently catch those muskie and get them in the net, but it sometimes rarely happens, and those moments are always very, very special, because one moment you're fighting a smallmouth into the boat, and the next moment it's just it's screaming drag, and you're like, what in the world happened? Like I thought I had a smallmouth on, and then I'll say like a muskie grabbed your smallmouth. That's what happened. And those are extremely cool moments that you can't plan for. They just, once a summer it might happen. Al Katona, he asks a question that I think I've already answered, about what fish choosing to target, and fishing style to fish for it. But smallmouth and fishing, gear fishing. Those are always fun. Gary Schillinger asks about techniques when there's a muskie that follows and it misses, and to increase the hookups. Gary, I think you just have to have perseverance and tenacity of spirit. Like, you have to believe that muskie is going to bite again, and you have to go back for it. Like, a muskie misses, and then a lot of people just give up on the fish. But go back. Put more lures in front of its face. Keep doing your figure eights. Keep fishing. Or alternatively, stop fishing. Reset. Wait 15, 20 minutes. Then cast to the same spot again and see if you can get that fish to come back. Both of those tactics have worked for me. Nothing's foolproof. Muskie are old fish that you have to trick into biting, and sometimes you have to be wily. You gotta do things to get those fish to bite. But just don't give up. I guess that's my biggest suggestion for you. Ben Bradley asks, why do I always catch more fish than my son? Well, Ben, that's not a very nice thing to say. But maybe let him know that maybe you're just the better fisherman. Say hi to your son for me, by the way. All right, Brooke Trout asks, Brooke Trout actually doesn't have a question. I take it back. I take it back. He does have a question, but it's in the next comment. He asks about the fish count for the current year and whether I'm going to share it in a video. I think I'm currently up to like 1,200 smallmouth, 60 muskie, 270 pike, 90 walleye, 1 perch, 1 crappie, and 1 creek chub. I think those are my numbers roughly for the year. I think. I could be off on that by a few, but I think that's roughly accurate. I think I was on the water this year 470 hours. I think I was in the raft 52 days this year, I think. I think that's correct. I'm trying to, it's all in there, but sometimes it's hard to process. Eric Wakeman asks, and by the way, Eric, you won, so please get in contact with me. Eric Wakeman asks, what is my most productive musky river lure? Mepps. A Mepps Agula spinner. I know that sounds lame, but it catches fish. Nathan Hook asks again, how early in the season do I fish for muskie on topwater? And I think I answered this earlier, but just go try it out. It might work, it might not. I fish sporadically, and I fish where I know muskie should be, and sometimes you'll be surprised at finding fish way earlier than reports online will tell you. WP Jim asks, the biggest difference between river muskie and lake muskie? I don't know. I don't fish for lake muskie ever. I guess I would say that probably river muskie, the density is higher. They're probably smaller, and they're probably slower growing. Lake fish probably are less dense, larger size, and probably grow a bit faster. And I think that has to do with forage. At least that's what I'm going to say. I think river forage is not as abundant as lake forage. But again, I'm making all that up, so that might be wrong. Chuck Fish asks, what is the best smallmouth river in the UP? My brain just fried. The best river for smallmouth in the UP. I'm not going to answer that question. Sorry, Chuck Fish. I was going to give you some silly answer. I was trying to think of the river that's out there in, I don't know if it's Maryland or DC. It's not the Potomac. It's like one of those rivers out there in Pennsylvania, maybe. It's like a super famous smallmouth fishery. I can't think of the name of that river. That's what I was going to say, just to be silly. But I'm not going to tell you the name of a river on the internet. That's not my style. Good try, though. That was a good try. I think, guys, that's all the questions we have. It has been nearly a full hour of watching me talk and listening to me talk. Hopefully there was something productive learned today. Some of the questions were somewhat, there were a couple questions that were fairly similar, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. I'll be doing another Q&A sometime upcoming. Sometimes it's better to have more specific questions, just because it you know, the responses can be a little bit more, you know, less generic, I guess I could say. But it's currently the day before Christmas. I'm going to go and I'm going to edit this video. I'm going to put it up. It's going up tomorrow. And I wish you all a very, very merry and happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And winter is not yet here. There's still open water. You could actually still be fishing today. I'm not, but I kind of wish I was. You guys have a good one. We will be on the water come spring. All right. Catch, release, wander. I will see you in the next one.